difference between
great.
the listing price and the selling price. I mean, it's frightening.
You're like the anchor of the neighborhood, aren't you?
Oops, no.
I've been here the longest.
All right.
Now
All right,
that-
everyone. Sorry, we're running a little late, but we should go ahead and get started. I think Doug will be joining us, but not at the moment. I don't want to keep Kevin waiting. I know we've a couple of things at the town board meeting last night that we probably want to talk about, but so I'd rather just go right into our topic for today, which is Canandaigua Lake water quality, and I invited Kevin Mulvaney from the Watershed Council to come and kind of give us an update up to this past year, what plans are in the works for next year, obviously focusing on town of Canandaigua, but you know, we probably are interested in kind of what's going on all around the lake. I'm going to share my screen for you guys on Zoom, and he's got a presentation. And with that, I'll quit talking and turn it over to you.
Right.
Oops, and I forgot to share my screen, so let me actually do that. There we go. All right, you guys on Zoom, you should be able to see this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
All right.
The rollerball.
Well, I appreciate everybody coming this morning and the invite, and we'll do this the hybrid approach as we're getting more and more used to it, right?
Yeah.
The new normal. So a lot of you guys have seen these, some of these slides. I'll show you newer versions of kind of what's going on in some of the areas around the lake. A lot of the issues, and others, and Joyce and Pat, and you all have seen, and we've been dealing with these issues from a water quality perspective for the last 2 decades or so. The thing that's really changed is the last 6-7 years. What we're seeing now is really this aspect of blue-green algae really becoming a force in the lake, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the science behind that aspect. So there we go. All right, so let me kind of fly through these slides. There we go. So obviously, the Watershed Council is the town of Canandaigua and the other 13 municipalities. It's typically the chief elected official that sits on the Watershed Council board. Meet every other month, work on a wide array of projects, and we'll go through some of those today. But we also have obviously a key ingredient to the success of what we do is our citizen group, the Watershed Association. Many of you are probably members of that group. 800 plus member group. Have 1,000 there. I think there's somewhere between 800 and 1,000. Great organization, and we do a lot of educational programming with them. We do a lot of citizen science work, partnership with them, which is it's a key component to what we do. Then we also have what's called the Watershed Commission, which is the 5 water purveyors that draw water from the lake. So the city, Elmira, Newark, Gorham, and Rushville, they have a set of watershed rules and regulations that pretty much deal with on-site wastewater treatment systems. So Tyler Oley is the watershed inspector. George Barden. George was here forever. Great person who did a lot of the work around here in terms of the on-site systems and general inspections. He retired, and now Tyler has been with us for about a year or so. So those same 5 water purveyors are also on the Watershed Council. But we also, one of the things that's different from our organization among many of the other Finger Lakes is we have as equal members in terms of deciding what happens in the watershed, the non-purveying municipalities like the town of Canandaigua, the town of Naples. You guys have an equal say as to what goes on and what we do and the prioritization of projects across the landscape. So that is a big difference. I won't go through these, but these are the key ingredients as to what what's our lake and watershed area is all about. Probably a couple of the big ones to remember, and probably with the lake level going up, it's always important to remember. The drainage area that drains to the lake is 174 square miles, or about 109,000 acres. The surface area of the lake is about 10,500 acres. So about a 10 times difference when you look at the land area draining to the lake versus the lake surface. So when you get 6-7 inches of rain in a week, that lake is getting that whole drainage area, which is 10 times the size of the lake surface. So that's why the lake went up about 2 feet or so. So we had maybe 6 inches on the lake surface, but another 1.5 feet of that water rise came from the drainage area, the streams draining to that lake. So the bottom picture is the West River and actually Naples Creek coming together, going in, and there's about 50% of the drainage area comes through those two main streams. So we're actually doing, making Naples Creek a focus area right now. And actually the town of Canandaigua down in Naples is playing a huge partnership role. And the town board was, and Jim Fletcher and Doug were instrumental in making this happen. Kenny Brockett, who just retired from the highway department, awesome excavator operator. I'm going to be seeing him in about a couple hours. We brought him back on, the town brought him back on a part-time basis to mainly work with the watershed program to do projects. So we'll reimburse all of Kenny's time that he puts throughout the land area, and then we'll be able to reimburse also for a significant amount of the excavator time that's out there as well, and that'll help reimburse back to the town. And so it's a great partnership, and it dramatically reduces costs across the whole landscape. And I'll show you some of the projects we've been working on. I bet you those numbers are outdated right now in terms of the $11,000 per foot of shoreline based on some of the real estate transactions that are happening lately. When you look at Ontario County as a whole, 12% of the tax levy comes from the shoreline area just in Ontario County portion. That's 0.2% of the land area. So it plays a huge driver role in terms of what the benefits from this lake. And obviously from a water supply perspective, it's huge as well. We have our watershed plan that was adopted in late 2014. And then we started seeing blue-green algae blooms in 2015. So we are actually in the process of updating the watershed plan to what's called a 9-element watershed plan. We're running a very complex and somewhat, we're finding, it's a nice model to tell us generally what's going on in the watershed, but we're running this model to help prioritize actions and activities, and it will complement our sampling program that we take on to help drive a lot of our actions. But that 9-element plan is critical. It has to be approved at the state level. So state DEC is very much involved in that watershed planning process. And the critical piece of the puzzle from a grant perspective is if you have a 9-element plan, you get a higher score on a lot of your grant applications. So we're taking this on, and it's been a 2+ year process just getting the model semi-right. It's supposed to depict over a 20-year period of kind of general pollutant loads going into the lake. And then we're putting in generic best management practices to try to see what's going to have the best benefit. I do not, and I will fight vigorously if the DEC says, okay, the model's going to tell us where we do our projects solely. And the model is nice, but every model is wrong, but it's a decent tool and it's a decent depiction, but it's got to be the field work that we do when we go out during storm events, when we go out and do our sampling program. So all those things in combination will help drive where we do work and what we do. So the watershed plan is broken down into these 5 major themes. The Watershed Council has no regulatory authority. You, the municipalities, have that regulatory authority. We provide assistance through a variety of means to implement a lot of those regulations. We do a lot of research in partnership with many other organizations. And I'll show you a lot of the restoration projects we're taking on based on a lot of the research that we've done to tell us, hey, we got to do more work in Sucker Brook. We've got to do more work in Fallbrook. We got to do a lot of work down in the Naples area. And then there's a bunch of other pieces all the way around the lake. There's about 160 or so direct drainage paths in terms of streams going into the lake. So each one of those has its own unique set of issues and problems. They're common themes, but you have to look at and really delve into what's going on in each of those areas to better understand that aspect. And then these are our major management categories within the overall watershed plan. So we break that down in this 120, 130 page document in terms of what are the specific actions that we want to implement for each of these major items. Obviously, blue-green algae since 2015 has been a significant issue around here in the kind of August through September timeframe. You know, we had a very, I would say on average, a pretty darn light year this year in terms of blue-green algae issues, up until about early October, when all of a sudden we had these calm days, and the remaining blue-green algae that was out there really just rose to the surface and really had a substantial impact across the whole lake surface area. So these pictures are from 2017, I think, yeah, and then this is 2018, right near German Brothers Marina, Putmore's Place right there. So it gives you the extent of kind of what we were seeing year after year. This is on the east side, northeast side of the lake that year. And then this year we had some similar type pictures in certain areas. So what's driving this? Well, it's a multitude of items that are driving this. One, we know we've got increased and are expecting to see increased rain intensities. When you look at this map, this is sort of extreme rain events in the Northeast. We're seeing a 71% increase based on studies done by Dartmouth University, looking at this issue and what we expect through climate change and a whole host of other variables. That is going to just intensify. So what we have to do is accept, to a certain extent, at the local level, hey, what can we do locally to affect global issues? But also we have to build resiliency into the system. We have to build in networks of natural capital, areas of larger wetland systems, reintroduce the floodplain to certain areas, get the sediment and nutrients back into the landscape, use our natural buffers, our natural filters, and implement better practices across the board to build the resiliency to better protect this area. So why does algae, and specifically blue-green algae, grow? Nutrients is probably the number one reason for that. Obviously, you know, all the other ingredients that we learn in high school biology class in terms of photosynthesis and light and temperatures, calm winds. It's what we saw out there. Typically, when you get that petri dish kind of condition, it creates the perfect scenario for the blue-green algae that we have, which is called microcystis. They have buoyancy control. A lot of the other algae just free float out there. So blue-green algae, the microcystis, actually has control. So they have a gas vestibule that they can actually rise and go down based on conditions. So that's their competitive advantage. They're one of the oldest living organisms on Earth, but that's their competitive advantage. So when we have a calm day, especially late in the season, August, September, October, they want to get right up to that surface to get any available sunlight. So they move up to the surface during the daylight conditions, and that's why we really see those blooms occur with microcystis, especially. Then at night, they typically will go down and look for nutrients. So they go back down to the bottom. And what's at the bottom? We have quagga mussels and zebra mussels. Quagga mussels are really dominating at this point. And what quagga mussels pump out is dissolved phosphorus, ready-made phosphorus for blue-green algae. So you have this semi-symbiotic relationship that's going on there, where the available nutrients that they need on a daily basis are being pumped out by the quagga mussels, because the quagga mussels are also filtering out all the good algae that are competitors to the blue-green algae. So from an ecosystem perspective, we have the quagga mussels taking out all the competition from the blue-green algae, and then they feed the blue-green algae kind of through the season, and that's why we typically will see blue-green algae dominate late in the season in our lake. And then what we add in from the watershed drainage area adds to that equation in terms of impact. So it's not just the drainage area that's causing the issues in terms of nutrients going into the lake. We have ecosystem functions within the lake that's also majorly impacting and exacerbating these issues. And then as our lake warms, you know, if we have warmer summers and longer summers, That also adds another competitive advantage for blue-green algae. They like to, their optimum temperature is in that 75, 85 degree aspect. And that's what we typically see by late August. So, get off the science a little bit. Now let's get into kind of the restoration. What are we trying to do in the drainage area? There is some technology, there is some research being done by DEC and across the country in terms of in-lake solutions. A lot of what we're seeing thus far really probably doesn't apply to our lake because our lake is well oxygenated all the way from surface to bottom. The solutions that DEC is looking at are really for the smaller, shallower lakes that have basically what's called an anoxic zone or a oxygen deprived zone at the bottom. And what that does is a chemical reaction that allows the release of phosphorus back from the bottom sediments up into the water column when you have lakes like Honeoye that go anoxic or other shallow lakes. So some of the solutions that are being driven right now are looking at how do you keep these lakes oxygenated, or can you seal the phosphorus in the sediment at the bottom? We don't have that primary issue in our lake, thankfully. So we really have to look to the drainage area for solutions to try to reduce our impact. So I want to just go through, just some of the projects that we've done and look at those and the impacts that they've had over the years, and then the ones that have from these most recent storms. So we've done, this is 5 and 20 project area, we call it. So it's Mrs. Policini's land in here, and then Dave Sauter provided a great easement to allow that flow to come out of. So Sucker Brook is draining south to north through here. This is the main branch, and what we've done is we've taken this flow and allowed it to go out into this wetland system here, and then built about a 3-acre wetland system and storage area out on Mrs. Policini's land. So this is all donated easement, and then we got a grant 3-4 years ago and used in-house labor. The town, the city of Canandaigua, and other partners were involved in building this project. So here, a little more zoomed in, here's that main branch of Sucker Brook draining about 1,800 acres or so of land area upstream of it. And what we've done is we've taken, so this flow goes underneath this undersized culvert, which is great. It's a farm laneway. So what we've done is we've actually said, okay, let's allow the water that used to just short circuit and during these bigger events and go back into the stream. We now allow that water through a subtle berm network to take that flow and bring it out into this big wetland system out in here, which is about 17, 18 acres, and then out into this 3-acre built wetland system. So we just basically, we dug this material here, used it to build this berm along here, and then along this section right here, and that water is now able to go back out into this natural storage area for filtering and treatment. So here's that main branch of Sucker Brook that's coming down, and then here's that flow that is on Dave Sauter's land. Let's see, what is it? Let's see if it plays. No, doesn't seem like it wants to play. All right, so that flow is moving this way, so it's moving west to east, and the wetland system, and I'm standing on Dave Sauter's land that he granted the easement to do this. So otherwise, all this flow would be jumping right back into Sucker Brook and going right downstream and making its way, making that 180-degree turn right back through the city of Canandaigua and right out into the lake. So what it does now is it works its way. So this is a picture actually from a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So I jumped out there during the storm event, and that flow is now working its way. So if you remember that picture, here's that big wetland system out here. So that flow is working its way and then migrates out into that big wetland system. And then, so here's that, right, that's what it looks like. That's the flow coming out of Sucker Brook, and the undersized culvert right here is right here. So some of that flow does still go through underneath this farm laneway, but the vast majority during this flood event is going off out into that 18-acre wetland system and into that 3-acre system that we built. So performing really well. I was psyched with how it functioned. We have a couple areas we need to retrofit just a little bit. I've talked to Jim Fletcher about that, and we've got that on our list to do. This is the County Road 30 project, and this is during a June storm of 2019. And what we did here was we put in a weir system that allows some of the flow to go through, and then some of the flow actually heads to the into our project area. Let's see. All right, that's okay. So that flow then beelines out into this area that the town of Canandaigua and the city of Canandaigua co-purchased, and it's in the town's name. But both municipalities provided funding to purchase the land out here, about 18 acres, just on the north side of County Road 30 by the Civic Center. And that flow then, that is routed, that portion of flow is routed out into this big natural storage area that functions very well during these storm events. And this is the one from about 2 weeks ago. So this was, that's about, so you're looking
Really
north.
filled up.
So that all that water is being stored and held and slowly released back into the stream. Otherwise, that would be going directly right back into, or would have been flowing right down Sucker Brook. So it reduced flooding on Outhouse Park. It reduced flooding in the city of Canandaigua area, and you're getting a decent amount of treatment by that natural area up there. So again, built by the town of Canandaigua, city of Canandaigua, and other partners were involved. Middlesex helped us out. I think Naples contributed, Gorham contributed towards this project also. So it's great working with that type of labor force who they know what they're doing. And if there's adjustments that have to be made, you can make them without change orders and lots of extra costs associated with it. So again, very pleased with how this one is functioning as well. Here's some other things going on that we've done actually in partnership. This is on the east side of the lake in Gorham, where we have these smaller streams that absolutely explode and create flooding issues. This is State Route 364. This is going down, flooding all over the place. This is a flow system from about 300 acres of drainage area. It's creating this amount of flow during these big intense storm events. So this, if the video worked, you would see this is a road system, and that's flow coming down that road from 300 acres of drainage area. So not a huge drainage area. This is Cottage City Drive, actually. So
wow.
Yep.
Okay.
I remember that. That was something.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
So, so that here's the drainage area in red. So the picture was taken right about here. So this drainage area is in red. So you have a mix of residential development, ag land up in here. So the town of Gorham purchased this land, and then we had Gorham Water, town of Canandaigua, the city of Canandaigua, Naples, Middlesex, Hopewell. We're all involved in helping to build about a 3-acre basin right here, and the town of Gorham purchased this land to at least take this land and get it stored. So about 60 acres or so of land area. What we were seeing, one of the storm events actually that was creating that flood event, from about here to about here, there was water pouring out of this landscape across County Road 1 and down into this drainage ditch. So what we're trying to do is at least take that offline and really reduce the peak flows going down through this system very quickly. So here's the system that was being built, and the great part, and here's that depressional area that we built into that system, and it can hold up to the 100-year storm event now during these big storm events. The other great thing is we used all of this material, or about 75% of this material was then transported over to the FLCC project, and we used it over there for, I'll show that project in a little bit. So here's, again, remember 50% of the drainage area is draining in from the south end of Canandaigua Lake. So here's a Google Maps it was a perfect time when they took this photo. This aerial image was the flyover. It shows this plume coming in, and that's Vine Valley right there, which is about 6-7 miles up the lake. You can see that plume is working its way 6-7 miles up the lake. So massive drainage area, and we really look at, what can we do? And then you can see here's what it looks like from up top, up on the high road. Here's that plume area coming through as well. So we know we need to do a bunch of work down in Naples area. We've been doing that, and that's where Kenny is really gotten involved with working with us to do a lot of these projects in conjunction with the town of Naples. And I'll show you some of these projects. So here's the main branch of Naples Creek right through here. You can see that, the flow is coming through. This is a storm in 2018, kind of a spring melt event type storm with a rain event. We've got the Parish Flats ag lands right here. You can see a lot of the flood flows come out and then flood this ag land area, and it picks up whatever's on the ag land also. So our goal is, we actually got the Nature Conservancy bought this land. Well, that's great. Well, it's high and dry during a flood event. So we said, all right, let's get this land to flood. It sounds counterintuitive. Yes, we want to flood this landscape. So what we did is we put in 3 berm breaks, because there's berming all along this land, this stream system, because they were trying to make this productive agricultural land 70, 80 years ago. So they tried to berm, they probably dredged the stream and then bermed along the edge. Well, it cut off the floodplain. So now what we can do is we put in 3 berm breaks right here, and Kenny actually did this work last year, and we reimbursed the town for that work. These 3 berm breaks are performing awesome, because this is during a storm event earlier this year, so it's a different angle, but this is a drone imagery again. That whole 80-acre system now is now being flooded. So the stream is coming out of that, here's that berm break, it now floods this. This used to be an old nursery, Meadowview Nursery, yeah. So that's their kind of the trail system, so it worked out perfect. They had all these native plantings out in there, which are built for kind of a floodplain system. So now it's able to flood this whole system on a more regular basis, and the amount of nutrient reduction and sediment load reduction being accomplished by this 80-acre area is huge. The other thing we did, this is the town of Naples did this work. So here's that active ag land right up here, about 300 acres, that gets flooded out. Again, there is this is the overflow from Naples Creek. What happens at 245, which is way down here. We're looking south. There's the kind of the terminal moraine, the windmills are way over here, which is the south end. So you've got about 30,000 acres of drainage area that's working its way to State Route 245, which is about right there. So then once the overflow happens and it floods that whole area, all that water makes its way through these ag ditches and floods out this area, picking up nutrients and whatever's being put down on the landscape. And that overflow is now making its way through here. There used to be berms, which is this picture is now looking, this one over here is now looking north, and there's the lake. So you can see that connection from the end of the watershed area, now looking north into the lake area. So what we're trying to do is break these berms, because this is a direct conduit quickly into the main branch of Naples Creek, and then it shunts that water quickly right out into the lake. So what we've done here is put in a berm break right here, and then we put in another one right here, and then a third one in this location. So instead of this water going quickly back into Naples Creek and then going right out into the lake, we're now encouraging this tortuous path, if you will, of using the vegetation. So we put these berm breaks in, so that flow now goes out here, it floods right in here. Then we put in a bunch of cross culverts underneath Parish Crossroad to reduce the flooding impacts that occur there, and then that water works its way out into the High Tor wetland system. So you're getting that whole treatment train occurring all the way through that network. So these are areas and this is where a model would never really showcase this effectively. This is us during storm events going out and out and out and kind of walking these areas and figuring out how can we kind of re-engage the floodplain, how can we get this to work. So we got easements actually from the Schumachers to encourage more of this by 245. And that's one of the things Kenny's been working on for the last couple weeks or so. And then Jeremy Fields actually donated an easement of 20 acres in a critical area to be able to do more of this water quality treatment. So we were very, very thankful to both parties to making that happen. So that's an ongoing project. We're going to be down there. Actually, I'm going to be meeting Kenny pretty soon. We're moving the excavator from one project site to another project site to do some more work down in that area. And the timing works out well because during the major construction season, Jim Fletcher needs those excavators. He doesn't need them right now, so we jump in and then we can reimburse for that excavator time, which at $92 an hour is helping to pay for the well more than the gas and the cost of the excavator. So it's a good relationship that way. So here's the Fallbrook project, about 4,000 acres of drainage area coming in here. So we identified a location on FLCC campus, and it's been working really well. And that's where a lot of that material came from. That project actually about right here. We transported all that subsoil material over to FLCC campus, and we used it to build about 3,000 feet of berm to offload and store a lot of this flow that otherwise what happens is it just comes right through FLCC campus. This is looking upstream to downstream. I'm right at the College Bridge right there. Then this is at the Country Club Bridge. So that flow goes out right into the lake. So here's some of those plumes that you would see out in the north end area, impacting the whole beach area, impacting the whole Kershaw north end area during these storms.
So that's what we see.
Yeah.
For years, I thought it was just like, when the.
Sometimes wind will drive it, yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of times it's really Fallbrook is coming in and creating that huge plume out there. So here's Fallbrook Stream right here. Here's that picture I was taking on the FLCC bridge. And now we're looking downstream. So what we did, actually 2020, timing worked out really well, March of 2020. Not much else was going to happen during that time frame, but we were able to build a crew to build this project out here. So we actually offload a decent amount of the flow out of Fallbrook, and then we built this berm system that kind of runs right along here. And then Dave Janeco actually donated an easement right in here, and then we worked in partnership with Dave Janeco, that he owns the land on the cidery, and we built a great partnership with the town of Canandaigua. He donated about I think close to an acre or so of land area here in terms of an easement. And then we take those flows that come off Star Cider in terms of the quantity aspect, goes into this big storage area, about 17, 18 acres. So we have plenty of storage for what little was going to come off of his landscape in the grand scheme of things. But we needed that land. It was absolutely essential. So he worked with us and made it happen. So what this does now is this water now comes off of the landscape, off of Fallbrook. We have this huge storage area out through this whole system. And then we were also, just off this picture right here, the canoe pond area connects into this landscape. And then we were able to take the whole athletic fields improvement work up at FLCC campus, and they were going to have to build this large retention pond area for the work up there, and the CMAC improvements. They didn't have to do that because we were able to make some improvements on the trail system right here using the grant dollars to be able to take all the flow from that landscape. The other big thing we were able to do is the flow that used to come down Lincoln Hill area and impact Sandy Beach. They used to have flooding. We offloaded about 40 to 50 acres of drainage area that used to go down there through the undersized storage pond at the CMAC pond, and then it would go right into the Sandy Beach area and cause flooding there. That flow does not go there anymore. It goes into this system that we built. So it doesn't completely solve their issues, but it definitely reduces their issues down in that area as well. So here's that kind of the what it looks like when that flow comes out of Fallbrook. It flows this way and then it goes out into that big 18-acre area. So that's water that would otherwise be going right out into the lake, and that's going into this big storage area that we have. And we built this subtle berm system, 2 to 3 feet high all the way through, and it's become their major trail network. So we expanded their trail network as well. It's awesome. This time of year, especially going out there, it's a great time of year to go out and walk that network because you can't hunt there, right? So it's a good area to go for a walk. And here's so this is a picture that I took. It's a video that it just wasn't going to work. But this is what the storage looks like. Here's the water stored all the way through the system. We hit capacity. And this is the emergency spillway right here. That water is coming out of the system, going back into Fallbrook. So we had 3 to 4 feet of water throughout this whole system across 17, 18 acres. So that's probably 25 to 30 million gallons stored into this system. So we had full capacity during that second storm event. And it worked really well. The spillway functioned exactly the way we wanted it to. And this is that grass trail that we have out in that area. We actually kept this grass, and it worked very well even as a spillway. So here's another project we're doing real quick, and I'll wrap up. But this is Tannery Creek, also about 4,000 acres. We had a major debris jam in the stream, and what happened was the stream, the embankment used to be about right here. Well, the debris jam forced that stream to erode about 15 to 20 feet of embankment all the way through about 180 feet. Just behind me is the town barn for the town of Naples. So this is a project we took on, and we just finished last week. We're going to do willow plantings, actually grab the willows from Outhouse Park. We'll bring them down here, plant them in here, and then we're going to do some more plantings. But it's, it's built by Kenny, and the town of Naples participated also. But these are 3-ton stones each, all the way through to protect this area and reestablish that stream bank. And then we're going to reestablish this whole area, because what was happening was the stream was migrating, and then it was going to get again back into this embankment. This is 20 plus feet high. This is 12 to 15 feet high in terms of embankment. We were losing hundreds and hundreds of tons of material downstream during these big storm events that came through, and it was just going to get worse, and it was going to undermine the town barn. So we jumped in with DEC emergency authorization, and Kenny and I we designed on the fly a little bit, if you will, but we built this all the way through from start to finish with these stones, and then we'll plant it with a nice riparian buffer all the way through.
Where are their town lines?
Tannery Creek Road, so south end of the village of Naples. As you're going just up 53, you would make a left. So this is just one, that's in there, and I think this is way outdated. This is, you can see the population increase in the town of Canandaigua. We're probably up to 13,000, probably somewhere in that. We're, by 2020 at this point. So, we've got our development nodes over here. So we just, you guys do a great job. Chris and crew, awesome job. Actually, I think that when I took this picture, Chris got out there, and then Doug Finch got out there, and they put a stop work order on this developer. They got this rectified very quickly, and we got it stabilized. So there is an embedded professionalism and great crew here that I think really takes seriously the issue of stormwater when we deal with development projects.
Kevin,
And
I have a
yeah.
question about that particular event.
Mhm.
So Menteith Creek has that waterfall,
Yes.
and in most recent rain, it dropped a lot of stones, and bottom line, it's pretty much dammed part of the lower part of the
Okay.
creek. Now I know because my partner owns half of that waterfall,
Okay.
but the part that is dammed is on the Shotland property.
Okay.
And I think it's also on a part of it's owned by Sarah Linda Hooker.
Mhm.
But my question is that dam in another rainfall, is that going to create, is there a potential for there to be more flooding in there?
Yes.
Because where it empties into the lake, there's that has been flooded in the
Yeah.
past.
Oh yeah.
So because the DEC doesn't have involvement with that creek,
Mhm.
what happens?
So the reason why we got involved in the other one was it was publicly owned, and we had public infrastructure protect. So
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah, that's the big apples.
Because the
and oranges.
private property
Yeah.
is a little different.
So I would say the landowners really need to look at that, and I would be more than willing to come down and help provide technical advice to kind of look at this issue more holistically and kind of figure out, because one of the thoughts was, well, let's build up berms on either side and run it that way. Well, berms fail, a lot of times in terms of right along a running water stream like that. It's a natural floodplain in that type of area. So
Because
They do need to
that
remove the
Shotland
dam.
property
Yeah.
where the house is,
Yep.
the guest house is
Yep.
built is quite low, actually.
Is it mostly on the upstream side of County Road 16?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, and in fact, you can easily see it from the bridge
Okay.
there, that,
Okay.
that take a ride by it
Yep.
and you'll see what I mean.
that sounds like a plan.
Um,
Okay. Yeah, there was a lot of these kind of issues, all over the place. So, but yeah, Menteith is one of our bigger streams in the town of Canandaigua, so, and it cranks when that stream.
It does, and so the potential is there because Russ owns to the middle of it on the upper part of the falls. He
Okay.
owns to the top of the falls.
Okay,
When we walk down there, you can actually see there are, and it changes every
Yes.
rainfall. It's changed on the upper part of that creek.
Mhm.
This is the first time we've seen such a heavy rock drop onto the lower part of the stream that empties into the
Okay.
lake.
I'll definitely go take a look at that for sure. If not today,
Don't tell him I
tomorrow.
told you.
Okay. No, Menteith is, it's one of those that we do worry about. We've seen it, when it jumps on the downstream side of County Road 16, it just.
Well, I value that property, so I just think it is a wonderful
Yeah.
space in the
Yes.
town of Canandaigua.
Yes.
But don't tell anyone I told you.
No, fair enough. That's it. So, one of the things, obviously, development's going to continue in the town. So it's just making sure that we're working on, during the construction and then, how these areas do get constructed. And we protect these natural areas as best as possible. And you guys do an awesome job at that. One of the things I just pointed out here is here's our intake pipe for the city of Canandaigua, if you will, which impacts obviously the town. So it's, right in close proximity to these areas. So, probably seen this sign going around. It's a little, yeah. So, I've been trying to move that around on the east side and then on the west side. We're gonna do this again next year. We stationed it over here at the transfer station for the last few weeks. We might move it one more spot, maybe, but we're getting past the lawn season. But, it's a great mobile trailer to kind of, and we try to make sure we hit the sign regulations by not leaving it in one spot for too long, so.
You can put it in my yard.
There you go, that's right. So, with that, and I apologize, I probably took a little too long, so I apologize, but I just wanted to kind of take you through a lot of the things we're working on and we'll continue to work on. And the town of Canandaigua is a huge, huge partner in what we do, from the highway guys to all the way through the system. So.
I think that was a great overview.
That was
Don't apologize.
amazing.
I'm really
Very
impressed,
nice.
yes.
Kevin, I've got a general question out of curiosity. We've been looking a lot right now at surface water. What about underneath, down into the ground? Is there a big water system down there? I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So when days like this, when we're not really having rain and it's stream flow, so it all works together, right? So, yes. So I would say typically overland flow is 10 to 20% of kind of a stream flow on an annual basis, whereas, the rest of that is being fed by groundwater. So that, that groundwater is percolating through, so it matters when you think about any type of fertilizer, manure, those kind of things that we're placing on the landscape. We want to make sure we're not overloading that, because all that will either run off or work its way through the system, especially nitrates that are more mobile in the soil. Nutrients. Bacteria can also move through that system as well.
Can we talk about the blue-green algae in this? I didn't realize the quagga mussels tossed off phosphorus. Will the quagga mussels ever reach a population climax?
Oh, they do. Yeah, they'll go every 5 or 6 years. They kind of cycle, and
But they don't disappear.
no, their reproduction rate is unbelievable. So it's
Okay. Is there any, I think I asked this question long ago, but is there any fingerprint of naturally occurring phosphorus as opposed to phosphorus that the farmers toss on their fields? And
you can
follow up,
Yeah, go ahead.
if we had no farming, would we have less of a phosphorus issue? we're in love with farmers and they don't get regulated because of the right to farm. And we've seen some out here on Parish Extension that have been problems. Does it make any difference in the big picture?
Yeah, so, how long do we have, right?
Yeah.
You know, so farming.
Who do we
Yeah, yeah.
point fingers at and
Right.
what's solvable?
Well, number one, you know, farmers are regulated. So that is important to remember. The larger ones that are around here, if they have more than 300 animal units, they are regulated by DEC. They have to meet comprehensive nutrient management plans. They have spreading regulations. They have to do a bunch of things. They have to do soil testing. The smaller ones, which is typically what we have in our watershed, are not regulated. That, you know, that aspect is being looked at, quite honestly, in Owasco Lake in terms of watershed rules and regulations on farmers. I think what they're proposing, number one, is not going to be allowed. Number two, it's not enforceable, and it's going to create a lack of trust and ability to work together on things. So, in terms of the total load of phosphorus in the lake and being able to partition out, you know, can you genetically test, if you will?
Where's it coming from?
Yeah, I think there is some high-end, somewhat suspect ways of trying to kind of ID or source it. Typically, I don't think it's going to be generally phosphorus directly. You're going to use other surrogates, carbon dating, that kind of stuff to figure out where is this coming from. You know, we know during our storm event chasing, if you will, ag lands for sure during these bigger events, you're seeing a lot of that runoff coming off of ag land areas. And our modeling does showcase that generally, the phosphorus load, you know, a majority is going to be coming from ag lands. Now, you know, do we point the finger and put the blame game aspect? And I know that's not what you're saying per se. And how would we regulate them, and, you know, can we regulate them? I guess, you know, my take is, how do we work with them? Especially when you look at the profit margins and everything else on the smaller farm systems is not great. How do we work with them and incentivize doing projects together? And how do we get them to reduce that portion of the impact? So it's very difficult. Our modeling was trying to figure out, the model can't do in-lake sources. We can use very generic type information to try to do that. The model that we're using, it's the one that was recommended, doesn't handle septic systems well at all. So we get this low contribution amount from septic systems, and it doesn't make sense per se. So there's other flaws in the model aspect that we've been working on with Cornell doctoral students for 2 years to try to figure out and work our way through that. So ultimately, I guess when I look at this, it's really that partnership approach, and working with farmers and understanding that we need this. When you look at necessary things, your homes are necessary, no doubt. But, you know, the farming aspect, especially here locally, is a critical piece of the puzzle for so many reasons. So how do we work with them instead of trying to regulate? Because the regulation aspect of saying, you're required to put in a 35-foot riparian buffer. Well, I can probably bring you to the vast majority of the fields that have streams that flow through them, that a 35-foot buffer for 95% of that field is meaningless, because the water isn't getting into the stream in that area. It's probably concentrating in a very small component of that area. So it's really, how do we work with them to build in these types of project areas? Like the Warners worked with us up on Dual Road and up above, right near Mentee, South Mentee. They worked with us. And I think it's those kind of approaches of making sure we don't lose wetlands, but at the same time, how do we build systems into these areas? So, you know, and the Warners are one great example locally of trying to figure out ways to partner with folks. So I guess, you know, that's my take on it.
I don't know, Gary, you know, we talking about farming pretty soon again, you know, and the regulation, and we ultimately don't know how much farms.
Can I give you a pinpoint
Contribute.
number? Can I say it's probably, when you look at human dominated land uses,
Yeah.
it's the #1 contributor, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we definitely have the
including the
signs
guys
to
that
back it.
have the green lawn
Yes.
plus and so on,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, just because we have the land area is, you're 30,000 acres of active farmland, as opposed to, maybe 1,000 acres at most that are actively being treated manicured lawns. So just that exponential difference creates that scenario. And the other thing is, a lawn is a lawn all the time, right? It's got the ability to filter, if you will, and really reduce runoff.
Mhm.
Whereas during certain times of the year, to grow corn, grow soybeans, grow crops, you've got to disturb the landscape. You've got to fall plow, you've got to chisel plow, you've got even no-till. You're still going to get enhanced runoff from that type of landscape. So there's a lot of work being done through soil and water, NRCS and others. Can we do more? Absolutely. I think that's the big thing. So we have the other thing, I think, from a CIC perspective and just a macro level perspective, we have grant funding. A significant portion of that was going to actually go to the RSM development to try to purchase that 500 feet of shoreline. That looks like it's not going to happen. From my understanding, they're asking way too much in terms of give back. So so we have funding available to help purchase some of these critical landscapes. The town of Canandaigua has done a great job of setting up reserve funds and funds to be able to, really strategically do this kind of stuff. And one of the things we're going to do in the fall and winter months is really try to dial in and further identify additional areas that would make a lot of sense. It could be 2 acres here, it could be 4 acres there, but we've seen if you can really take that piece of the puzzle out of production, and a lot of them are in areas that are not really productive to begin with, marginally. So it's okay, great. There's a partnership there where the market can really help us. They say, yeah, well, I'm willing to sell this at this price or donate or, however. So those are the tools in the toolbox that I really think we should emphasize from a farming perspective.
Since Tom wants me to respond to it, don't you think that the good farmers, though, are very conscious of their
absolutely.
land, because the topsoil is a runoff, and that's a top quality land that they have to work with?
One of the things we see, so one of the things you get a matrix of, and that's true, but maybe sometimes it's rented land. A lot of that, so putting the investment into the rented land to, when it's a year-to-year lease, you just, you don't get that type of investment of, say, I know it sounds crazy, but the best thing a lot of times is to put in a tile drainage system in a concentrated flow path. People get upset about tiles, but that can really reduce the saturation of the soil in that area, which can really reduce the erosion during a storm event. So a lot of times farmers are not willing on rented land to invest and do some of the things, or say, okay, yeah, I'll take this section out of production. I'm just going to plow through it this year, because we do have in most places an abundance of topsoil. So you can kind of just plow through that system again. It's a lot quicker and more efficient to fill that erosion channel back in, year out, than it is to try to take it out of production or lift your equipment up and go through that area and keep it as a grass swale. So those are, we actually identified a project that'll impact Fallbrook. We're going to work, we hope, with a landowner. I'm going to walk with them next week. About 80 acre, actually it's a 96 acre piece of farmland this gentleman just bought. And there's about 3 acres that if we can take this small little piece of that 96 acres out of production, we can build a huge system of filtration and storage. And I think they're on board with that. So, yeah, the regulation aspect, I cringe at that approach.
But bottom line, if we didn't have farming, we'd have a cleaner lake.
Yes,
And-
but
and
what are we substituting that with? Are we substituting it all with forests?
Well, it's happening as a matter of economics. Every time we do a new comprehensive plan, the balance between vacant land and farmland is diminishing because it's not economically viable as farmland. So that's helping us. But
Yeah.
the best farmland we have is north of us, and that's somebody else's watershed. But the crappier farmland is unfortunately in our watershed. It requires more fertilizing to be productive.
Yep.
And it's also steeper. So it erodes.
Right, it does, yeah, there's definitely certain areas where, yeah. So I guess that's, yeah, how do you regulate that, I guess?
Well,
when we go back,
I
yeah,
guess we can,
Yeah.
but we should
Right.
acknowledge it. And
Oh,
we
absolutely.
should work
Yes.
with them
Oh, I
and
tell-
stop being
Yeah.
so much in love with farming.
I think you can
I know
hold them
it's-
accountable and
it's
be in love with them at
it's
the same
heresy,
time,
but
right?
everybody is
Is
in
this one
love
being
with
recorded?
it.
That's
That's
That's right.
So you
So-
better eat zebra mussels.
That's it. There
I
you go.
think we ought to, it's kind of like that, what is it, that fish down in Florida, it's such an invasive.
Oh, the one that jumps, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, what I would suggest that,
Lionfish.
it's, to me, there's a whole host of tools in the toolbox to deal with farming, but I don't think, at least from our program perspective, we've always looked at, based on our sampling program, yeah, the ag-dominated subwatersheds have some of the highest nutrient loads. So we've known for years, and that's why we're working in Sucker Brook and Fallbrook and Naples Creek and some of these other areas. So we know that that is true. And yes, if you took out farming and replaced it with wetlands and forests, for sure, you're going to have higher water quality. Yes, that is true. But a lot of times that's not what happens. It's manicured lawns, it's, residential development, which has its issues as well. May not be phosphorus per se in some cases, but it could be heavy metals, it could be other toxic substances that we're worried about. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. So,
Farmland doesn't solve the problem.
right.
So I just had a comment, and because I think this is really fascinating about re-engaging the floodplain
Mhm.
and how that's an education that we need to, we need to educate people that they don't have to be afraid of water. Meaning flooding is okay in certain areas. I mean, I think it scares people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely look at, all right, what is the unintended consequence? Where, what can we impact something downstream by doing this? So we look at those kind of issues a lot. And a lot of these are, we go out during storm events to make sure, hey, is there a negative impact? What's going on here? So, but yeah, that is an educational piece, where can we do these?
Right,
Right.
absolutely.
Flooding is natural and we've
Yeah.
limited its ability
Right.
to happen.
And
So we
we're
need to
so
put it back.
focused on concentrating flow and stormwater.
Right.
And that's, it seems like
Yeah.
this is like the antithesis a little bit in that.
And every
the more
stream
global-
floods.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
that's okay, and that's
Yeah.
what they're supposed to do.
Well, I guess the issue is, there's two things within town code perspective. There is the definition of stream, which is, runs 6 months out of the year, that I think that's a fundamental thing that needs to change. Then there is using the floodplain regulations just on the map floodplains. So, but we know every stream floods, but you look at the floodplain, very little of our stream systems are shown as FEMA floodplains. So I think that's where the buffering system of new development, especially as you get closer to the lake, where the drainage area is increasing and everything flattens out and wants to spread out, really encouraging and requiring the setbacks from stream systems. It may be, a channel width of this table 95% of the year, but all of a sudden this channel width becomes, twice the size of this room, maybe 2 times a year, maybe 2 times a decade. But that's enough to create damage, complaints, finger pointing.
Mhm.
If we just remove the structure from the problem area, then we don't have that issue. And the water can spread out and naturally slow down.
Right, and do its
So,
thing.
yep.
Now, how often do you do testing, Kevin, like for Cheshire, places like that? Because that's been one of the areas that we've been very concerned about for
Right.
many years.
I did a little bit. I wish I could do more. I mean, it would be good. It's one of those areas, it's a long list of areas that we definitely want to do enhanced testing, so it's something that we as a group could, focus in on and do some more testing of Mentee, and you can kind of bisect it, looking upstream and downstream of any influence from Cheshire. It's going to be a tough one to kind of really be able to document and prove. We were able to do that down in the village, Naples, and helped them a lot. But they had gravelly soils, so that the nitrates and the bacteria were going right to this little raceway that actually is set up perfect to test and isolate out other sources. Mentee, it's tough because you have all these other influences that are coming in, and how do you really scientifically validate and isolate, yes, this is coming from failed or underperforming septic systems. But it's worthy of trying to do that. It's just we have a lot of priorities to try to sample across 109,000 acres. So, but if it's, I guess that's something I would lean back on you guys. If it's really something that you are actively trying to pursue grants and look at, trying to sewer that area, then, maybe it's a sampling design we got to come up with.
It's a perpetual discussion.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is timely. I mean, we just sent out a letter on Monday to the residents of Cheshire asking them if they'd be interested, if they're in favor of the town pursuing funding again, now that we
Okay.
have some additional funding opportunities
Yes.
out there
Yep.
with the ARPA money.
Yep.
So, of course, we won't hear back from the residents yet, but last time when there was less funding available, they were not in favor of it due to the cost that they would have to
Mhm.
bear the burden of it.
Right.
So I mean, it is something we're looking at again. If the
Okay.
residents seem to be in favor of it, it might be interesting to maybe take a relook at that
Okay.
and see if there is any measurable impact.
If there were measurable impacts that came back, is there grant opportunities
It does help.
for water quality?
Yeah, it does
Okay.
help, in your grant
And that
scoring, if
could
you can
be-
show that
right.
type of documentation. Some also would be, does Tyler have records of number of failed systems, that kind of stuff? So, does he have an inventory of the systems? Are they sized properly? What's the cost to upgrade them? That kind of stuff,
Right.
so.
You brought up another question. When the town is doing inspections of the septic systems and land transfer or within X number of feet of the
Mhm.
leach bed, what percentage of failure are we seeing in compliance?
I don't have the answer to that one. I can ask Tyler on that. What is he
You
seeing? But I
get
think
any
he was-
feedback?
I've heard it's somewhere in that 15 to 20% range that they're undersized for the design capacity. Somewhere in that range. But I think that would be good to have him tally that if you can do it per town. Because we're probably into year 3 right now for his inspections
It
of.
seems so, yeah.
Yeah, because I saw something when I was up in George's Barton's office, a couple, 3 years ago, where they keep a tally of each town.
Oh, yes.
And the septic systems and how many have, passed and how many haven't.
So we can definitely talk to Tyler about that. Sure.
This is great, thank you, Kevin.
Absolutely.
An ongoing battle.
Oh, yes.
You've got a job for life.
It's, again, we're,
Job security.
well, there's a lot of people
Figure
involved.
out
I mean, that's the,
what's going on, then you have more information that comes in,
Yeah.
just all
Right.
kinds of factors, but, thank you.
we appreciate
so
it.
much.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that was really great.
Good.
It's been a
It
while
was.
since we've had you here and gotten a nice thorough update, so.
Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but I mean, you mentioned the stuff you're working on right now, but looking into 2022, projects that you have
Mhm.
planned, is it mostly like, you mentioned someone above FLCC and continuing work in Naples, I think you said?
That, and, we're looking, one of the things we're gonna do is, and if this group and others that are involved, if there's strategic land areas that you guys are looking to say, it'd be great if we had funding to be able to acquire, maybe it's a small portion of this landscape, and I can, one of the things, just to be blunt, kind of looking at certain areas like where Jeremy's building, whatever he's building up there on Middle Cheshire Road. I mean, is there a piece of the puzzle that, especially when you look at above the landings, we have ongoing drainage issues in the landings area, right? We always have. So that forested area up above, is there something there that, we could work together to say, hey, can you keep this area out of development, out of taking down all the trees?
Linda.
On
Those
Linda,
areas,
yes. Yeah, that's, right there also, there with Westbrook,
That
there could be
corner.
that corner. I mean, that could be a key piece to say, instead of coming back each time to try to subdivide this area and put a home in a spring and a wetland,
Yeah, maybe
maybe there's a better option.
yeah, absolutely.
So,
Very good.
Thank you.
That'd be great, thanks.
It was an interesting, it was really interesting.
I might wanna talk to you about a newsletter piece at
Fair
some
enough.
point. I was just thinking about all the stuff you're talking about. I wonder, I didn't know about all those projects, so I know other people probably don't too. That'd be kinda neat to put in our newsletter at some
And
point.
just the facts about shoreline and the drinking water, you know, how many people drink it, the lake water, those are great things
You know,
to know.
most people don't realize how many draw water from Canandaigua Lake. And I never realized that part of the reason it comes from Canandaigua Lake is because Canandaigua Lake is higher all the way to Lake Ontario.
Yeah.
Right.
So it drains downhill. I
Gravity
mean,
feed.
who would even think that?
Right, you can have a pipe 50 feet below the surface and you can get to Newark by gravity flow.
By gravity feed, yeah, because I know a water commissioner, so,
Yep, there you go.
who has given a presentation about that. So all the way from Naples to Newark, and I'm not sure how much further north it goes, these people all draw water from Canandaigua Lake. It's,
I would say most people don't. know
that's the word that should get out, because that whole area is affected by Canandaigua Lake water.
So there was an article in yesterday's paper in the Daily Messenger about, it was mainly about Florida, but it,
Yes,
I
saw that.
Smells like death, and that always gets the paper selling, I guess. But one of the things that's good to know is that we've done, through our water purveyors, extensive testing of both the raw and the finished water, and all the results on the finished water for all the purveyors came back non-detect for any type of toxin. And then the raw water, we did see a little bit in some of the samples. The city of Canandaigua's intake pipes, actually, I think it's the shallowest at 42 feet. But they have probably overall the best treatment system with sand filters and everything else. So, and they've got a long contact time with chlorine for destroying the toxin aspect. So there's a big comfort level in terms of that aspect, that we've got a system in place at the levels we're dealing with right now in terms of blue-green algae, that we're in good shape. But going down the line, all of a sudden you really increase concentrations, that's where you get a little bit concerned. So.
Who determines how much we, whoever the hell we is, charges for water? What I'm thinking when we're talking about Elmira or whoever, why don't we boost the cost per 100 gallons by a dime or something?
No, I think it is more expensive.
I don't care. It's still a hell of a lot cheaper than if we were in
Yes, this is true.
Arizona. And use that extra money, have a separate fund to buy all this marginal farmland.
I think it's a good idea to look at that as an option.
I think water is cheap.
Water is cheap, right.
And let's make it a little bit more expensive and fund cleaning up.
Yeah, our funding formula that we use for all 14 municipalities, we weigh several factors. The factor that gets the highest weight, which generates the most revenue, is water purveyors. So we do pull from the city of Canandaigua, Elmira, Newark, more so than some of the others because of that aspect.
Water should not be cheap.
Yeah.
Well, there's more to it than that too. All of this aquifer and what, I've seen your presentation before, although you had more added to it, that affects well water. And we live in an area where many people have dug wells, and we as a town say, we're not going to give them city water because we don't want to promote development in those areas. Well, I have to tell you that everybody in the United States of America deserves to have potable water coming out of their faucet, and they don't. And I could get really irritated. We have a place on the Erie Canal in Ontario County, that 1 mile stretch, that takes its water out of a well, which the well is compromised because that water comes from the Erie Canal. So we have to haul water there. That is a no-no. That should not happen. You know why? 500 feet away is a fire hydrant that way, and 500 feet that way is a fire hydrant. We're in a 1 mile stretch that doesn't have water. That is, and we have the same thing in Canandaigua.
Water should not be cheap.
It shouldn't be cheap. We should be providing water to anybody that needs water in Canandaigua. And I'm sorry, that's the old me talking.
Not entirely changing the subject, but when you were talking about stream definition, water flowing every 6 months, Doug posted, I didn't see it till now, but Doug posted a definition from our town code. Is this something that we changed recently? That it defines it this way. I won't read the whole thing, but it doesn't mention the 6 months.
Yeah, that got changed a couple of years ago. That portion relative to stream where 6 months, Kevin's absolutely right. And I know that we had talked about that before. I'm pretty sure that got updated and that refers to a water course now. So
Well, I guess how would that apply to the, I had provided a review regarding the one on the east side there, what's it called? The
Canandaigua
Shores.
Canandaigua Shores.
Mm-hmm.
I think those water courses that come down off that landscape would meet this definition.
Sure, absolutely. It's up to the planning board, right? Because it gives broad authority to the planning board. It says, a stream, gully, or body of water identified on either the Town of Canandaigua water course map, which is available at the Town Development Office, or identified through site reconnaissance as part of the planning board review.
Okay. So one of the comments that came back from my review though was and I'm trying to remember where it came from, but it was that it doesn't meet the definition of stream because it doesn't flow 6 months out of the year as part of the initial review. So I think,
Maybe Shauna, it's something we can dig into and see where that came from and stuff.
Yeah, we'll look into
okay,
that.
because I remember so I'm glad to see this. I wasn't sure if it got adopted because we were involved in defining that 20 acres of greater drainage area. So,
And they're starting over. So
yes.
We'll make sure that
Okay.
There's continuity there.
Now, does that apply like with the buffers, the regulated buffer area from the edge of a water course? Or is that only for streams still that are the 6 months out of the year? Remember, we have you guys have in your code a 100-foot setback.
Right, does it apply to water?
I think we'll have to dig into that, Kevin. I think that actually got adjusted too when we did the NRI. I don't think Joyce is on the call.
Yeah.
Is she? But
No,
I detected-
yeah, I think we changed it to all Class C as in Charles streams would be subject to the setbacks that are mentioned in our code. Because you're right, trying to come out and determine whether a stream has 6 months it's free flowing or not was an issue that code enforcement was tough to define. So a more definable method was just define it as all Class C streams.
Right.
The
So
setbacks.
the one that was on those water courses, we'll call them, that are on the Canandaigua Shores are not Class C streams. So that was the dialogue that came back to me. So I guess that's my question, maybe back to this group or the larger group, is how do we integrate the water course component into some level of a buffer? I don't think you need a 100-foot buffer on all water courses, but
Not to exclude them from the conversation.
right,
Yes.
right. Like how does this definition then integrate into the regulations?
Yeah, that's something.
Okay.
Sounds like Chuck.
It sounds like it's something that needs to be looked at a little bit more.
Yeah, we should look into it in more detail. It's important.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah, we'd have to apply the water course definition and whatever restrictions that has to those fingers that you're talking about, Kevin. And then and there is no Class C stream on Canandaigua Shores, if I recall.
Correct.
There is not.
Okay. So we'd have to apply water course restrictions and make sure that they're held to those. And I know it was a topic discussion when we were going through the phase 1 of the Canandaigua Shores application, its initial applications, and it will continue to be as we move forward with that application.
Okay.
It's good to get into the details every once in a while, right?
It
You gotta
is.
jump in the weeds. That's right.
And Kevin will certainly call on you for your expertise on that. Thanks as always.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Well, it is 10:24, but I don't want to go on too much longer. I want to let you guys go at 10:30. But before we quit, I know most of you probably already know, but at the town board meeting last night, they did approve the 2022 priority goals for the CIC. So that was nice to get that support. But they also approved the resolution, they passed the resolution for the gateway signs. So,
They approved what?
The gateway signage resolution.
Oh,
yeah, so
Those signs
Cool.
are beautiful.
what that allows is that now we can approve the contract, or they approved Doug signing the contract with Sign Language, which is the company that the Gateway Signs team has been working with. They're the ones who did the design for us. I'll bring it up here in just a second. They, so, which is great because now we can start working with them to get the signs installed. Sorry, I want to stop sharing. And I'm not sure exactly what the timeline will be. We still need to work with perhaps DOT, the county, and any private landowners for the exact locations for the placement of each of these signs. We know the general area because there's a list of about 11 locations all around the town, all the major entry points into the town, but there's 5 that are prioritized. But let me pull up the sign just in case some of you guys didn't see it. But I just wanted to let you guys know that because that was nice to get that support. Why can't I see large sign?
Sign proof.
Yeah, that's the one that says large. Make sure our Zoom friends can see it.
That's really nice.
Okay. This should be sharing. And just real quick, so this design was created by one of the people who work at Sign Language, and I just want to point out the ridge lines and the topography that's taken from an actual photograph looking south from the lake around near Ononda area. And those of you who've been on the lake and looked at Ononda, you probably recognize it, but he actually took a photo, put it on the screen and edited while we were in a Zoom meeting and traced the contours. So, I mean, it's very
That's cool.
recognizable. It really is what we see from the town. So it was pretty cool.
And the wind's coming out of the west.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which it does.
Yeah, so it's pretty fun. It doesn't look like everybody else's signs, you know?
Right,
That
it's
was
nice.
one of the goals of the team, is they didn't want it just to look like everybody else's welcome sign, so. There's a plan for one larger sign, coming down, hopefully to be placed somewhere near the town boundary, near Town Line Road, on the southbound side of 332 coming out of Farmington. Because that's, you know, there's a lot of traffic on that road. That's probably the biggest entry point into the town. So that sign will be larger. Probably it's roughly twice as wide as the sign outside of town hall and slightly taller. All the other ones are about the same size as the one out in front of town hall to be placed at other areas.
They did a good job. Yeah,
Looks very nice.
really.
Yeah, the I forgot his last name, but the gentleman's name is Max, who works for Sign Language, the graphic designer. He should pretty much get the credit.
We're gonna
Without
show up
too much
Farmington.
prompting, he came up with this. We had input, but on, you know, basic colors, but he did the design, so it's great.
Gold cap.
Yes.
Yes, there will be gold leaf on
I
them.
know, I heard about the Grand Marching paint last night.
Yeah, so
Beautiful.
that's exciting. I just wanted to share that for anyone who didn't go. And thank you, Oksana, I don't know if you're still on here, for doing the presentation to the board about the project.
Were you gonna mention the scenic?
Can't hear us.
Oh, yeah, you wanna talk about
Yeah,
that?
also last night, the scenic view shed overlay was approved. So that's a big win, and
Should make
worked on
everybody
that
happy.
we've worked on that for a long time.
Yeah.
We certainly have.
Yeah,
Not only us, but other people before us.
Right,
Worked on it for years.
Yes, that
right, I
one's-
mean, years and years.
That one's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't exactly what everybody wanted it to be, but it's definitely a
start.
step in the right direction and it'll be good.
Yeah,
A lot of
it
good.
will.
That's all I've got. Thank you, Kevin, again,
I appreciate
for
the time,
coming,
absolutely.
answering
Thank you.
questions. Thanks, everyone else.
Thank you. Kevin, do
Sorry.
you have to leave right away?
No, I got some time.
Can I come,
Yeah,
can I
yeah,
show you that
yeah,
area?
absolutely.
Okay.
Than's for sticking around, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi all.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, anybody that's got